Well, Nicolaus, thank you very much for coming to talk to us.
No problem.
And you are producer of the play.
That's right.
And play that was written by Tatiana Miloserdova.
Correct.
And that is going to be in Theatro Technis from 17th to 21st of October.
Yes.
Commemorating October Revolution in Russia.
That's right.
100 years of Russian Revolution. And it's called Chains of Hatred.
Yes.
This production will be shown in Russian language with English subtitles.
That is correct.
I just want to ask you a little bit more about your decision to put this play on.
Well, my decision to put the play on is based on the fact that when it was presented to me, I realized its subject matter, and I thought that we should put on a production of it in October to celebrate, or to commemorate, I should say, the October Revolution, being that it's the centenary.
It is very interesting to me because usually English people are interested in Russian Revolution only if their ancestors were somehow involved or lived during that time. Do you have any members of your family?
No, I'm afraid there's no members of my family that come from Russia, although my son's grandmother was Russian.
Okay.
But that really didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, she had met his grandfather when, that's my wife's, ex-wife's father, in a concentration camp during the war. So aggression and wars have always been discussed in the family, I suppose.
Thank you very much, I understand that. What I wanted to understand is the play goes in many sort of discussions about revolution, because this play is about the actual creation of revolution. It is not before revolution or just after the revolution. It is actually during the time when families were torn apart, when families were taking sides, when people were actively leaving Russian country. They were running abroad, they were trying to escape.
Yes.
Do you think there are some parallels in this play with what's happening now in the world?
I think there is, very much so. I mean, even in this last week, there's been the start of a possible revolution again in Spain. I mean, they have had a civil war in the 30s, and it looks as though they're very upset, the Catalonians, and they could start that again, yes. And I imagine that there's quite a few Catalonians who are sort of moving into the rest of Europe.
Yeah, just like it was in 1917 when people were moving out of Russia. Do you think revolutions are healthy, or do you think it's maybe something that have to happen?
I wouldn't say they're always healthy, but they are inevitable. Because at the end of the day, sorry to use that phrase, they don't actually work for the benefit of the population. In fact, politicians of one side or another never work. They're always more self-interested.
I understand. This play is quite, I couldn't say controversial, but probably will be controversial because it goes into discussion about religion, it goes into spiritual attempt to understand the revolutionary movements, and whether God helps them or devil helps them, or why we are drawn into it so much. Would you agree with that?
Oh yes, yes. I mean, as you see the play, if you see the play to the end, you see how divine intervention does solve everything. Well, to a degree, or for the play anyway. Perhaps, obviously not for the revolution, but for the play.
The characters of the play are all ending very badly. Was this dramatic ending required? Why didn't you look at it with probably more enthusiastic outlook?
Well, yes, that is true. That was really the writer's wish to. I actually wanted at least one of the characters to survive and actually go on. But then, I suppose the next 20 odd years in Russia at that time wasn't good for anybody, so nobody really survives unless they go into politics and start taking over. But none of the main characters of this did. I had hoped that if the character of the maid had survived, she would actually go further.
Okay, so we see very dramatic developments of fate of the characters in the play.
Yes.
All right. So, and for some people, maybe it will be maybe upsetting them a lot. Maybe some people will think that it is a bit too much. There's a little bit of violence going on in the play. There are obviously some romantic sides of it.
Yes. I don't think anybody will be shocked by it. I really don't, because that's life. That's life. I mean, they might be shocked by the main male character, who turns out to be quite an evil person, but then, as I say, divine retribution does catch him in the end.
All right. Well, there were definitely a lot of interest about Russian revolution on. Maybe I've heard programs on British radio,
yes.
Obviously some programs on television. And did you sort of thought about it when you decided to sort of put the play in that particular time of the year, 17th of October?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I mean, I suppose most people only know about the abdication and following the assassination of the Tsar, which obviously happened in, I think, something like May 1918. And that was really quite a horrific event, because the actual assassination was really quite violent and cruel.
Absolutely, but there is also a argument that Tsar decided not to be a Tsar anymore, and he was killed as a citizen, not as Tsar.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that before, but yeah, that seems. But that doesn't give any reason for the violence and.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
absolutely.
I mean, there were the two bodies which got lost, but then they were refound many years later. So it was a mess, because they didn't even have proper soldiers to do the firing of the rifles. They just had sort of conscripts that were shooting everything everywhere. It was really a bloody mess.
It definitely was a bloody mess, and I lived in Russia after that mess. I lived in former Soviet Union, and I think it will be an interesting play for Russian people to see.
I hope so.
And I think it will be very interesting for English people to see whose ancestors were involved in the revolution, or whose parents flee revolution, or grandparents flee revolution. I think it will be very interesting and educational for them, because once you know where you come from, where your ancestors come from, I think you can move on a little bit more in your life.
Yes. I mean, I was in Russia during this last May Day, and I actually was in Red Square. And I was actually fascinated by the fact that so many people had these selfie sticks with a photograph of a parent or a relative or whatever that had died in the First or the Second World Wars.
Absolutely.
We don't have anything like that here. We don't remember things in that sort of way, and I was actually very fascinated by that.
But I'm very glad that you decided to put this play on, a very historical play about Russian Revolution, and I'm very grateful and privileged to be one of the characters. And I just want to invite everybody to come to the Theatro Technis to see this wonderful production. And thank you very much, Nicolaus,
well, thank
for
you.
today. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.